All right, I'm excited anytime I get a chance to talk to this guy right here because he is an absolute legend. Now, he came into the NFL in the 1998 NFL Draft when the Detroit Lions selected him in the second round with the 60th overall pick out of Eastern Michigan University. And after coming into the NFL, he enjoyed a 15-year career with the Detroit Lions and, more importantly, the Pittsburgh Steelers. And during his time with the Black and Gold, he went on to be a two-time Super Bowl champion. So, of course, we are talking about the one and only Charlie Batch. Steve Batch, man, appreciate you taking some time today, man, to jump on the show with me, man.
Hey, not a problem. Appreciate you having me.
Now, without a doubt, man, and we got a lot to talk about, man. So I figured we'll just get right into it. We had a draft. Shout out to the draft, man. 7 new members joining the Black and Gold family. What was your initial reaction to the draft, man, and to the picks that the Black and Gold made?
Yeah, I thought they went into it and coming out of it, I thought the needs that they had for this team, they addressed them. And I know everybody wanted them to think, figuring out what they were going to do at the quarterback position, but ultimately there were other holes on this team. They needed to get younger in the defensive line group. They were able to do that. And of course, adding pieces and speed along with that draft class. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And I mean, when you look at that, you talk about adding some of those pieces to the D line. I mean, big Derek Harmon, man. Anything that kind of stood out to you about him, man?
Yeah, I think when you just a big body in general, right? And I think everybody has that sour taste or that image as Derrick Henry is running all over this team, and you're
Yeah.
like, okay, we need to fill those gaps. And of course, Cam Hayward, he's had that Hall of Fame career. We know where he's at, but we don't know how long he's going to do it, right? And I think ultimately his body is going to determine how long he's there. But you need to get younger, and when you do so, now those guys get an opportunity to learn from one of the best who have done it. And when you allow that in that group, it's a nice blend to be able to do it. And I think ultimately this is going to be something that is going to be a strength of this team moving forward.
No, I like that. And trust me, man, seeing the Ravens extended Derrick Henry, we know we're going to have that answer ASAP. So I'm looking forward to it as well. But what would you say was your favorite pick? I mean, we had some offense in there, some defense in there, quarterback as well. I mean, yeah, which pick was your favorite?
Of course, I love to go to quarterback, right? Of course, when you take Will Howard and everything that he's accomplished, and we see what he did at Ohio State, and of course that stands out because he's had that championship run and leading that team. But I look back on what he did at Kansas State, and those are the things that
Hmm.
really, when you look back and all the adversities that he had to have faced throughout, because when you're not that talented team with a lot of those weapons around you, people want to see how you actually perform. And it just kind of reminds me of myself and Ben Roethlisberger as we were coming out, meaning that you had to prove yourself in the Mid American Conference. And then people felt, oh, wow, we think he can actually develop at this particular level. So I think when you look at what Will brings to the equation, I know he went in the 6th round, but ultimately, can they develop him now? Because he's not in a rush to actually have to play, but the reps that he is going to get throughout, if the roster stays what it is today as we speak now, there'll be a strong chance that he can compete for that backup and ultimately, put his hand in the pile as it relates to what it looks like moving forward for that starting position.
No, absolutely. And, I wanted to ask you also, I mean, as it pertains to Will Howard, right? We believe in him. We obviously know he's a proven winner, and we see what he was able to do at both of those stops. But why is it that it's almost like he's penalized due to the talent that was around him at Ohio State compared to if he played where he didn't have as many resources around him?
Yeah, I think when you go back from a scouting perspective, you're like, okay, yes, he has the talent. We know he has all the intangibles, but it's hard to evaluate that group because you have a bunch of draft picks around you on the whole offensive side, especially when you're playing at Ohio State in that particular manner that's producing first rounders year after year after year. Those are things that scouts kind of maybe they take a little bit away from me from a grading perspective to say, well, we're not really sure. But either way, all you ask for is that opportunity to get with the team. He was excited about it. You can just see what his
Yeah.
reaction is, and that just lets me know that as they were having conversations leading up to the draft process, they're like, "Hey, what ideal team do you think that you can help with?" But ultimately, when you look at it, say you can start a little bit earlier than other teams, and however it falls, the excitement that he had, and he's like, "Yes, that's the team that I wanted to go to." That just lets you know he was on their radar just as well as the Steelers was on his radar.
No, absolutely. And that definitely is good to see, and especially from the fans' perspective. You want to know that guys are eager and excited to be here versus looking at it and saying, man, why? I don't want to go there, man. So I like that. But we also had recently this week the Steelers' official schedule for the 2025 season. We got some primetime games, got some international games, a crazy back half. What's your thoughts on the schedule, though?
Yeah, I think for me, when I look at it, it's ideally you would like that bye week to be a little bit later, and those are things that I immediately look at. You know,
Yeah.
you're playing in Pittsburgh for me because I've been around so long. This is my 23rd year being around the Steelers organization. Primetime games are what they are. You know you're going to get four of them, maybe five, in some cases six. That's just what it is. So I'm not worried about what that looks like throughout the course of the season. But what does the bye week look like? And I think ultimately, when you have that coming off of that Ireland game, you know, how will that look moving forward? And I think ultimately, you saw last year, the team got tired out. How will
Hmm.
that now affect them? So do they train a little bit accordingly? Do they adjust the schedule? That's ultimately what Coach Tomlin is going to have to do with that strength and conditioning department to make sure that his guys is ready for a brutal 3 quarters of the season. Not second half of the season,
13 game
3 quarters of the
stretch.
season. So those are things that you just kind of look at and just figuring out a way that you can get actual rest when you're coming off a Thursday night game, as they do a couple times. So this is going to be something that you pay attention to. But again, that's middle of the season to end.
No, without a doubt. And I mean, with that though, when you're talking about some of these games, we do know there are some, pretty big names out there in terms of the Detroit Lions. We talk about, the Bills coming into town and stuff like that. But which game or games stand out to you the most, or that you kind of have circled and saying, all right, I'm excited a little bit more for this. I'm really looking forward to this game right here.
Yeah, I think for me, it's your division games are what they are.
Hmm.
So I'm gonna take it from a non-conference perspective. The one of the games that I want to see early, I want to see what they look like against the Chargers. You're going out on the West Coast. How are you able to go out there and handle business that way? And of course, the Packers at Acrisure Stadium. But the one game that really is surprising to me, because most of the time the Detroit game doesn't matter. But as you start to wind down, and as talented as that group is right now, that they are legit. So you're going to have to now look at that end of the schedule to say, we got to go up to Detroit and face a tough team. That is something that you haven't done often because you only play the NFC North every 3 or 4 years. So that's going to be a game that they have to go up there and win if they're thinking about the potential division games. Not to Baltimore at the end of the season. They're going to have to handle that one. I think that's ultimately going to play implications as it relates to how they feel or how they fit in the AFC North.
No, I like that right there. And I mean, we obviously know as the roster stands right now, we're looking at Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, Skylar Thompson at quarterback. But for you, how much changes if Aaron Rodgers is officially here versus where we are currently right now with the position?
Yeah, it changes because it strengthens the group because you bring a lot more experience into that. So here you are in a critical time as OTAs are starting to begin. You're trying to get a feel for your team. Mason Rudolph, yes, he was here, but he wasn't in this system. So he
Hmm.
does have a leg up as it relates to learning that offense because he's been here for the last couple months and making sure that he's able to go out there and deliver, learning his teammates. But when you add an Aaron Rodgers, I think the longer it goes towards training camp, I think you have to give the edge to Mason Rudolph because that means he knows the system a little bit better to what Aaron Rodgers looked like. We understand what his resume looks like. But again, this is not a system that Aaron has spent the majority of his career in that you could say it's a plug and play type of situation. I just think the longer that this goes on, I think this is going to be really, you're kind of, walking on thin ice as it relates to, how soon are you going to put him in there because
Yeah.
he may not know the intricacies of the offense as it relates to how the receivers are going to break the route. What does it look like? That comes in the OTA. So again, this is a conversation as we have now, but it could change if he signs sooner rather than later.
No, and I'm glad you actually transitioned to Rodgers because I did have questions about that part right there that you were talking about. You being a veteran guy, man, done this thing 15 years. I'm sure your level of getting acclimated and picking up on a new scheme or even a system, you could do it at a lot faster clip than you could probably in year 1 through 4. So for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, if you just had to put yourself in his shoes for a little while, how much time do you think he truly needs to be ready to go by week 1? Because even with Russ last year, we saw him get injured in training camp and he didn't even have a lot of physical reps, but we knew once he got healthy, they pretty much plugged him in there and he kind of hit the ground and started getting some production out the gate.
Yeah, and a lot of that comes down to, when you compare the two, Russell did have the OTAs that he was able to
Yeah.
actually participate in. So he
Mm.
had a couple months before you actually get to training camp to make sure that he knew the nuances of the offense. This is kind of a little different because now he hasn't been here and then you're throwing him into the offense. Listen, you're not going to throw a defense at him that he hasn't seen before. So I'm not worried about it from that particular perspective. It just comes down to the verbiage and the terminology of what this offense is going to sound like, and then him stepping into that huddle. So it's more or less the connection that he's going to have with his receivers more than anyone. The offensive line protections, those type of things will take care of itself. It's just how does he build the relationships with the Calvin Austin, the DK Metcalfs, these Roman Wilson, all of these guys that he is going to potentially play with. And again, what does that look like? We just don't know. Those are the things that I just have not necessarily big question mark, but there's a small question mark as it relates to how that gel is going to happen and how fast it's going to happen. Because remember, it's not like back in the day where you have 2-a-days where you can actually work morning, afternoon. You just don't have it. You get one practice throughout training camp, and those are things that really you're going to have to expedite that learning curve.
Hey, and that's why we ask you these questions because you're the expert, baby. You've done this, you've lived this, man. Now, we know we had the big trade, man, with George Pickens going to Dallas. And for some people, they looked at that and said, well, could that be one of the things that maybe makes Aaron Rodgers a little bit more hesitant or not want to join this team? From your perspective, do you feel like that trade is going to have that type of impact on Aaron Rodgers' decision, or do you think that those are two separate things right now?
Well, if you just take what you're hearing from the facility and the Steelers organization, like, hey, the lines of communication are open. So did he know that prior to it? Maybe, maybe not. We just don't know that. That's only between Aaron and the organization. But if you're just Aaron in particular, you're like, man, that would have been two great weapons to have on the outside. But ultimately, this is the business. It had nothing to do, to me, this is my opinion, it had nothing to do about his play on the field. This has everything to do with the business of football. And when I say that, it's the fact of, I'm sure his team was trying to renegotiate his contract. That didn't necessarily go the way that it wanted to go. So here he is now in the final year of his deal. The Steelers, they could have held tight and said, well, you're not going anywhere. Maybe let you walk out the door next year and then figure out what the compensation package looks like. But in fairness, you're like, do we want a disgruntled receiver that's going to be here, knowing he wants a contract, knowing he's looking at a guy that he should be getting that type of money? And maybe it was just time for a change in that particular receiver group. I would have just loved selfishly for him to learn from a veteran like DK. And I feel that would have helped his career moving forward. And in fairness to George, I understand people, they'll throw things out there. They're upset the way that everything happened. This dude played with 5 quarterbacks since he was here.
Seriously, man.
So when you get frustrated, he lost more games in Pittsburgh than he's ever lost throughout his entire career. So all of those things kind of add up. And I'm a big George Pickens fan. It's just unfortunate that that's the memory that we have, but everybody is not thinking and taking everything else that was involved that he had to endure over a 3-year period and take that into the equation. I hope that those lessons that he learned while he was here is able to help him in Dallas, and I hope he has a great career. But either way, like they always say around Pittsburgh, hey, once a Steeler, always a Steeler. So
Absolutely.
Don't pour dirt on him as much as everybody trying to pour dirt on him. At some point, hopefully you're able to welcome him back with open arms.
No, you're absolutely right. And I mean, that's the context that does matter. And hearing you say it, it does even add more validity to it. And speaking of, the different quarterbacks that he had, one of those guys being Mason Rudolph, as it stands today, that could be QB1, or he is QB1 right now. If Aaron Rodgers decides not to sign with the black and gold, what's your confidence level in Mason Rudolph this season, or even just the group, Mason Rudolph, Will Howard, and Skylar Thompson, if those had to be the guys that we operate with this year?
Yeah, I'm excited for Mason because he's been waiting for this opportunity. He's worked his tail off since he's been drafted. Didn't get the full opportunity. Yes, we saw him during the COVID years and those type of things that he was able to build with him and Duck Hodges. But when you see where he was last year, he wanted to be that guy. Contractually, that didn't happen. So it wasn't like he moved for the sake of moving. Money just determined that it wasn't going to be here, and he felt that the opportunity was going to be in Tennessee. Played, did a nice job that while he was there, gained that experience, and now he's able to bring it back to Pittsburgh. But again, it starts with the fact that it's not the same system that we saw him 2 years ago run it at the end of the season. This is a completely different offense. But again, what does that look like for him? Mason is ready for the opportunity. I'm excited because I know this is going to be his moment. And if all things work out, that means he's going to bring some excitement here for this season.
All right, I like it. Hey, that's how we get fired up right there, C-Batch. Only you could do that for us, man. All right, so that's why we appreciate you. Now, the final thing I have, man, is we obviously know you do an awesome job off the field, man, and you've been doing this since you've been playing. But talk about your Best of the Batch Foundation and what you currently have going on, or anything that you guys might be having coming up during the offseason.
Yeah, so we just Best of the Batch Foundation. We're an educational foundation, and we focus on our STEAM programs. We say STEAM instead of STEM because we include the A for arts in our after school program. So we just celebrated 26 years. So we are excited about that.
Let's
We
go.
serve over 4,000 kids annually in 9 counties throughout southwestern PA. So we're getting super excited about all the support and everybody that believes in the mission and vision of the Best of the Batch Foundation. So as school is winding down, we are ramping up because right now we actually are getting ready for our summer day camp, and it's an 8 week camp, 4 days a week, and right now we'll have close to 250 kids that will participate. So second week of June all the way through the end of July, it will be busy. We have our camp counselors that are on deck. They're excited to be a part of the Best of the Batch. So this is going to be a fun summer, but ultimately, as we gather throughout the rest of the year, these are things that we just continually do and all the support that is there. So if anybody wants to learn more about what we do, they can go to batchfoundation.org. You see all of the educational programs that we actually run. But ultimately, if you want to sponsor a kid, you can do that as well. You can go onto the site and say, hey, we want to help feed kids throughout the course of the summer. Because the one thing that people forget is the fact that there's a lot of kids who depend on school to eat breakfast and lunch. So we want to make sure that we continue to fill those shortfalls to make sure. So when they walk in for summer camp, they get breakfast, lunch, and a snack on the way out the door. So they're with us from 8:30 until 3 o'clock. And then from there, they're able to go home and make sure, hopefully we tired them out enough that they go home and want to relax. But it's just we're super excited about what's happening here. And ultimately, as we went from 5,300 square feet to 33,000 square feet, we always want to show it off. So if anybody wants to come over for a tour, people who are out of town, when you come into town, please reach out. We would love to give you a tour because there are so many supporters, not just in the city of Pittsburgh, but outside the region that has been believers in what we're doing. So I just truly am humble and grateful for all the support. So we truly say thank you.
No, without a doubt. And like you said, man, definitely check it out. If you have not, man, I strongly encourage you. It is a beautiful facility, and you guys are doing some amazing work over there, man. So keep it going. You know, we big supporters and big fans of you, man. But that will conclude us for the day, man. But once again, appreciate you so much taking time to jump on the show. And like you said, man, if y'all enjoyed it, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. But until next time, baby, peace.